Hello, friends and residency candidates, and welcome to today's success story interview, where I have the pleasure of speaking with Linnea, a matched applicant, and now brand ambassador with Match a Resident. So hello and welcome.
Good morning. Welcome.
Can you tell us a little bit about your match, where you matched and what specialty?
Sure. I matched into MedPeds at the Medical University of South Carolina, which is in Charleston.
Wonderful. Yeah, and so was MedPeds something that you were planning on pursuing for some period of time, or was that more recent?
So I did not discover MedPeds until my pediatric core rotation, actually. So my preceptor happened to be MedPeds, and that was my first encounter. So that actually happened towards the end of my third year. I didn't start medical school thinking I was going into MedPeds. It was actually internal medicine. Yeah.
So in your perspective, what is a tangible differentiation between MedPeds and, let's say, internal medicine or just pediatrics? So where's the intersection for that specialty?
Really the intersection is really with people who perhaps had congenital illnesses, special needs. So there's a continuity of care for providers who would treat them as babies all the way until they're hopefully geriatrics. So that's where we definitely see a fusion, at least in my perspective. It's very similar. The patient population is the same as a family medicine physician in that you see pediatric patients and adults. It's just that you are eligible to sit for both the pediatric and internal medicine board at the end of training.
Perfect. So. And can you tell us a little bit about how you even got to medical school? What was that journey like for you?
It was a very interesting journey. So I graduated on the 20th from Ross University. So that is one of the Caribbean medical schools. So I'm technically a US IMG. I didn't set out to go to a Caribbean school. I don't think anyone really does. We all hope to apply to a medical school in the United States and go on, but that just wasn't in the cards for me. And I had some really great friends that actually were Ross alum, and they encouraged me, instead of setting back my goals for years, applying or spending money, to see if I could apply to a Caribbean school. And it just so happened that I applied and I was accepted at Ross.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And was it something that you went to straight from undergrad?
No, I'm actually a career changer. So I worked in the public sector prior to applying to medical school. So once I decided to switch careers, I actually went back to school to complete all my prereqs, and then I applied to medical school. So I'm a non-traditional student.
Yeah. And can you tell us a little bit more about what you were doing and then what influenced you to pursue medicine?
Sure. I worked in community and economic development. I worked in the state of Georgia. I actually hold a master's of public administration from the University of Georgia. So I was working in that field. I always have wanted to be a physician. I always felt passionate about policy, health policy, advocating, just kind of learning how government and medicine collide. I was working in one of my communities, and there was not a physician that lived anywhere in that community, and they had to travel 40 miles to the nearest hospital. And I said, you know what? These are the types of communities that I actually want to help, where there's a need. And I want to hopefully use my background in the public sector with medicine and work on filling some of those gaps where there might be medical deserts or other healthcare disparities.
Yeah, absolutely. In what ways do you feel like you're going to be able to use that background as a physician?
One of the ways is kind of helping communities understand the recruitment of physicians, right? That has nothing to do with going to medical school. It's like, okay, from an economic development and community development aspect, this is what you need to kind of increase your physician workforce. These are what people are looking for. I think that's one aspect that I can utilize. The other aspect is understanding what government does. at the local, the state, and the federal levels, and understanding some of the red tape and how to get policy issues addressed at any of those levels.
Right.
Yeah, so.
Wonderful. Well, we absolutely support you in that journey and hope all your
Thank you.
endeavors come to fruition and you're able to really help as many people as possible. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
When you actually got to medical school, what was it like for you?
Medical school is hard. I went to medical school in the Caribbean. I went to school at the time. I lived in this small country by the name of Dominica, beautiful country. Unfortunately, my time in Dominica was interrupted by Hurricane Maria. And so there are several other medical schools that were impacted by Hurricane Maria, but I was part of the class that actually had to go through a Category 5 hurricane. So the island was completely destroyed. Our school was destroyed. We had to relocate. I actually did a semester at sea in St. Kitts. So there's multiple moves. My medical education has been not stagnant at all, to say the least, with things outside of just the classroom, which makes medical school hard. So there's a certain level of resilience, I would say my colleagues and I have definitely shown on our journeys.
No doubt, no doubt. What was something that helped you get through all of that?
Knowing what my goal was, right? And I think I guess I'd say I'm a physician now, but you have to be pretty resilient as a physician because you don't know what any day has in store, right? The day you walk in the hospital or your office, you don't know what's coming at you. And I think that's something that I had to hone into, like, you know what? Okay, we're living on a cruise ship. Let's go. We're moving again. Okay, okay. By any means necessary, it has to get done.
There you go. Definitely.
Yeah.
And so when you were preparing to apply, what was that process like for residency?
I will admit it was very stressful for me. MedPeds is a pretty competitive specialty. And I had to really think about, could I do it? Could I be successful at matching into MedPeds? When a lot of people, when they say, well, look at the statistics, what does it say about US IMGs or IMGs in general matching into MedPeds? There's only so many programs, are you sure your step one score isn't that great? So I had all of these voices, kind of talking to me, but I still had to say, well, you know what? The worst thing that somebody could say is no. So this is my life and I have to take a chance on myself. So.
Yeah. And when you were applying, did you apply to a backup specialty or just
I did
MedPeds?
apply to a backup specialty. As an IMG, we're always advised to apply to a backup specialty. So I applied to internal medicine as a backup, and I had some conversations. There were a few, even in the interview process, a few program directors knew that I applied to both. And they were just like, well, would you be happy just doing one over the other? And I said, before I discovered MedPeds, I would have been happy with IM, internal medicine, which is why I applied internal medicine, because I could be happy. But at the end of the day, I think I would have applied to less programs, honestly. I think fully taking a chance on myself would have been just apply MedPeds and see what happens. But you always are thinking about plan B just in case. So.
Was there anything that you were doing throughout the application cycle to help get your foot in the door, get some leads, potentially get some interviews?
Oh, I will say that I tried to attend a few of the conferences that they had. There's a National MedPeds Association, and they had a really great, informative kind of programming for medical students throughout the summer. And so I attended that. I'm admittedly not the person who likes to just cold email people. I'm just not that person, but I tried to kind of form relationships with people through that conference. I'm a member of SNMA, so some of their career fairs, if they had people speaking from MedPeds, I would try to reach out to someone if I was interested in their program. And so there were quite a few residents and program directors who were very responsive and helpful throughout that process, which is, surprising to me because I'm like, I don't want people to think I'm disingenuous or anything like that. But I would encourage people definitely to utilize, go to attend some of those conferences, whether you can attend virtually or in person. And sometimes you just need to have one conversation with one person. You don't have to have 20 conversations or reach 20 people. It's sometimes just one person who will sit and talk with you and kind of give you some guidance. And that happened to me.
Yeah. And were there any of those people that you had reached out to that you actually got interviews with for their program?
I did, actually. I got interviews with several of the people that I reached out to. You know, and unfortunately, there's some programs, just like any program, for whatever reason, they don't want to interview IMGs. And that is just something that as an IMG, we understand. It might not be stated, but we understand. And I just hope to kind of alter that perception for the IMGs coming behind me, that everyone should get opportunity.
Yeah. Were there any particular tools you used to help find those programs that would consider IMGs?
So I definitely use Match Resident. I use Match Resident. I use Match Resident for both of my lists, for internal medicine and for MedPeds. There were a few programs that I applied to outside of the list that was generated, but overall, I really do like the product that Match Resident offers, because otherwise you're just like, I don't know where to apply, who to, I don't know. And I needed that. I needed a little bit of help. So.
Perfect. Well, it's
Yeah,
an amazing starting point
it is.
for applicants to use, and then, continue doing additional research and maybe picking some more programs that might not be on that list, but we're certainly glad to
Absolutely.
hear that it was helpful.
It was like, for me, I needed something because of one of my step scores. It's kind of like, well, what programs would even give me an opportunity just based on all the data that you guys have collected? That helped me. That gave me some guidance. So.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And so once you actually got to the interviews, what was the overall tone and nature of your experiences?
Overall, interview season went really well. I think that the very first interview was like, oh, I don't know what to expect. I was fumbling over my words, but once I got in the groove, you know what? Being an IMG really didn't matter. All of the programs that I interviewed with obviously looked through my application and thought I would, at least be a good fit for their program and wanted to talk to me more. And so I don't have any horror stories, minus the fact that it was all on Zoom. That's okay. I've met some pretty great people. There's even people that I met, other applicants that I met that I actually still keep in contact with. Just to see, where they ended up in the world. So.
Were you following up with programs after the interviews at all?
I didn't do a ton of follow-up. What I did do, because I didn't want to be the person that inundated programs with just emails about nothing. I asked them about ECFMG certification, when that was required, if it was required by rank list order, all of those questions was how I chose to interact with programs. And that's about it. A lot of programs through the process will say whether or not they want you to send all these thank you emails or how they want you to communicate. And of course, if you have a valid question, you can ask. But I just thought most of the programs did a very good job at presenting us with the information we needed to know to make decisions. So I didn't do too much follow-up.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And was there anything that's, when the programs were presenting their information, that you felt was exceptionally well done, or something that you felt was missing out for any of the programs?
I think some programs really got into having a social media presence, allowing us as applicants to be able to see the people of their program. Because for me, that was the most important decision going into interview day, or who are the people, right? And so some do it better than others in terms of, presenting that. And I think others are just now coming around to it. But overall, I think everyone did a good job given the times that we're in the virtual interview process of showing us who they are and presenting all the information we probably could ever have wanted. And I think part of that is because this was now, I guess, season 2 where everything was virtual. So they got some feedback from the first go around, and you could definitely see they were on it. So yeah.
Yeah, they had a little practice, just like the applicants,
Absolutely.
Sure. And were there any factors that were really important to you aside from, just who the people were, but what else were you looking for when you were making your rank list?
Okay, so we'll just go talk about MedPeds. For me, all the MedPeds programs are great. The people, everyone's great. So when I was looking at rank, it's not like, well, am I going to learn from this program? What am I not going to learn? That wasn't the question. People was the number one thing for me. Number 2 was location. I needed to be somewhere where I was somewhat close to my family, and if not close, I can get to an airport close. That was a factor. Looking at benefit packages is important. Salaries are pretty much the same across the board, so I can't say it was a salary thing. But for me, it was definitely location and people. And then probably the diversity of the patient population that I'd be able to see. That is.
Yeah. And so is that something that you asked programs or you got a feel for during the interview, or was that data you were looking at in, Residency Explorer, for example?
I actually didn't use Residency Explorer at all. But it was data I gathered on my own. Since having that background, I can look at population demographics and stuff. But it was a question that I asked in my interviews. I asked about patient population, pathology diversity. I asked about also just the diversity of the residency program as well, in general, does it reflect the population that's served? These were important things for me to ask.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
What is one of the top pieces of advice that you would give to future applicants based on your experiences so far?
In terms of how you're going to apply or where you're going to apply, always take a chance on yourself. Whether you're a US student, an IMG, an FMG, whatever your classification is, take a chance on yourself. Really look into the programs that you want, look at how competitive you would be, and sell yourself. That is my number one piece of advice.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Is there a way that people can stay in contact with you on social media and continue to learn from you and be inspired throughout your journey?
Sure. So I started a social media page just for this journey. You can find me on Instagram at Doc Mitch Stuffins. And that's where I'm going to post about my residency journey. So feel free to reach out to me there if you have any questions about MedPeds or any advice. A few people have already done that. As long as I have time, I will help. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, we wish you all the best in your endeavors and throughout residency and beyond. And we thank you so much for sharing your experiences here today.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.